and to be absolute and thoroughly convincing, such truth must be inwardly experienced. When an appeal is made to logic, a statement or proposition is to be proved according to rules of thought. And these rules are sure to be conditional, and, therefore, more or less one-sided and prejudicial. When the Mahayanists have to assert or deny, they run the risk of being judged by the rules of thought, and perhaps all they can establish in the circumstances is to say that all things are devoid of mind, will, etc. As above referred to. This is where Mahayana philosophers are always in a quandary, and this is the reason why the Mahayana teaching looks on the surface at least as self-contradictory or full of paradoxes. To apply the term Atman, ego, soul, not only to a person but to all inanimate objects may sound strange at first sight, as was stated above. But when it is realized that Buddhist philosophy has no special intellectual interest in the discussion itself except from the most pragmatical point of view, i.e., as concerned with life, with this person, with its salvation and enlightenment, the extension of the term self, or soul, over to all existence seems justified and appropriate. At any rate, the dual non-ego theory is one of the features of the Mahayana as differentiated from the Hinayana. The psychology of Buddhist experience. The doctrine of mind only. Having finished that phase of equipment which may be called logical, for the upward career of the Bodhisattva, let us now pass on to the psychological phase, that is, the doctrine of consciousness, technically known as the theory of the 8 Vijnanas. As I wish to repeat, Buddhism, being a religion, has no abstract interest in logic, or psychology, or metaphysics per se. And especially in the case of the Lankavatara, the chief problem is to reach a state of self-realization which is the sine qua non of Buddhahood, and of Bodhisattvahood as well. All efforts are to be directed towards this goal, and it would be entirely against the spirit of the sutra to discuss the psychology of the Lankavatara. I am doing this simply for the benefit of the modem reader who wants to get a better perspective of the text than in its original confusion. Psychology is, however, the most difficult part of the Lankavatara, and it is not an easy matter to get a clear insight into the meaning of it. What I have done here may not be quite correct as far as the reading of the text is concerned, and I am open to conviction from the hand of a more competent interpreter. Most Buddhist scholars are often too ready to make a too sharp distinction between the Madhyamika and the Yogacara school, taking the one as exclusively advocating the theory of emptiness while the other is bent single-mindedly on an idealistic interpretation of the universe. They thus further assume that the idea of emptiness is not at all traceable in the Yogacara and that idealism is absent in the Madhyamika. This is not exact as a matter of historical fact, though it is impossible just at present to fix the date of the Lankavatara definitely. We find in it the tendencies that might have developed into the Yogacara as well as into the Madhyamika. And these tendencies must be regarded as prior to the development of these two schools, each distinctly claiming its special province of interest. The differentiation must have taken place after the sutra and not before. For it is natural to infer that composite tendencies appear first and then their decomposition into separate ideas and further development each along its specified line. However this may be, the main point we must never forget in the study of the Lankavatara is that it is not written as a philosophical treatise to establish a definite system of thought, but is to discourse on a certain religious experience. What philosophy or speculation it offers is only incidental as an introduction or as an intellectual interpretation necessitated by the rational nature of humanity. This latter phase of religion's experience may be more predominant in Buddhism than in some other religions. But it is not for us to overlook the essence of the matter for the sake of its more or less unimportant accessories, however inevitable they may be in the understanding of it. As was definitely stated, the principal theme of the Lankavatara is Pratyat Mariya Vijnana, the state of consciousness in which the inmost truth is directly presented in one's mind. This being an immediate perception of the truth, it cannot be imparted to others by means of logic, but without it the perception itself ceases to be operative, which is the same thing as not existing at all or being unreal. The experience itself is without content, and must be given to it by the intellect to make it workable in our social living. The psychology of the Lankavatara is also to be treated thus. That is to say, its doctrine of mind only, with all its accompaniments, is meant to explain the mental experience of the Bodhisattva. We have always to bear in mind this subordinate position of psychology or logic or metaphysics in the teaching of the Lankavatara. The doctrine of the vijfinana is described in this wise. As the waves of the ocean, depending on the wind, are stirred up and roll on dancing without interruption, so the alay flood, constantly stirred up by the wind of individuation, rolls on dancing with the waves of the various vijnanas, as dark blue, red, and other colors with salt, conch shell, milk, and honey, fragrance with fruits and flowers, rays of light with the sun. They are neither different nor not different one from another. So the 7 vijnanas, which are the waves of the ocean, rise in conjunction with mind. Manifold are the waves evolved in the ocean. Likewise indeed the alaya sets in motion a variety of vijnanas. Chitta, manas, and mano vijfinana are spoken of as different because of appearances. In fact, the 8 vijfinanas have no specific qualifying marks. There is neither that which qualifies nor that which is qualified. As there is no differentiation in the ocean's waves, so no modification obtains in chitta as regards the vijnanas. Chitta gathers up karma, manas inspects, the vijfinana distinguishes, and the 5 vijnanas discriminate the visible world. Mahamati asked, dark blue and red and suchlike are known to be the vijfinana of mankind. Tell me, O Mahamuni, how a likeness is obtained between waves and mind. The Buddha answered, dark blue and red and suchlike are indeed not in the waves. It is for the sake of the ignorant that mind is described as evolving due to appearances. There is no evolving in mind. Mind in itself is free from that which is perceived. Where there is that which is perceived, there is that which perceives. The case is the same with the waves. Body, property, and abode are known to be the vijfinana of mankind, in which an evolution is thus observed. The analogy holds good with the waves. Mahamati said, the ocean with its dancing waves is discernible, and why is not the evolution of the alaya likewise perceived by intelligence? The Buddha replied, in accordance with the intelligence and discrimination of the ignorant, the alaya is compared to the ocean, and the likeness of waves and the evolution of mind is pointed out by a simile. Mahamati requested, like unto the sun that illumines equally above and below, thou art indeed the light of the world. Announce the truth for the sake of the ignorant. Thou hast already begun the exposition of the law. Why dost thou not announce the truth tattvam? The Buddha then replied, even when there is a man who discourses on the truth, there is in his mind no special object to be called truth. As the waves are stirred on the ocean, as images are seen in a mirror, in a dream, simultaneously, so is the mind in its own field. To discriminate objects, an evolution of vijfinanas takes place in succession. The vijfinana distinguishes, and manas again reflects. The visible world manifests itself to the 5 vijfinanas. There is no successive evolution when mind is in a state of collectedness. As a painter or his disciple arrays his colors in order to produce a painting, so do I preach. The picture is not in the color, nor in the canvas, nor in the plate. In order to attract all beings, the picture is produced in colors. Preaching may err, but the truth is beyond words. Being the master of all the doctrines, I preach the truth to the devotees, and the truth is to be attained by an inner perception, as it goes beyond both the distinguished objects and the distinguishing subject. I preach for the sake of sons of the Buddha. This preaching is not for the ignorant. The manifoldness of things is seen as like Maya, and exists not. Preaching is thus done in various ways, subject to errors. When the preaching is not in good accord with the mentality of the hearer, it is then for him no preaching. A good physician administers medicine according to his patients. So indeed do the Buddha's discourse in accordance with the mental capacity of beings. The masters thus preach the state of consciousness, attained by their inner perception, which does not belong to the realm of the philosophers and Sravakas. According to the Lankavatara, the mind, inclusive of citta, manas, and the other 6 vijnanas, is in its original nature quiet, pure, and above the dualism of subject and object. But here appears the principle of particularization known as vishaya, which comes from the root vish meaning, to act, to work. And with the rise of this wind of action, the waves are agitated over the tranquil surface of the mind. It is now differentiated or evolves into 8 vijnanas: alaya, manas, manavijfinana, and the 5 senses. And simultaneously with this evolution, the whole universe comes into existence with its multitudinous forms and with its endless entanglements. The following is indeed the constant echo reverberating through the sutra. The visible world which is mind does not exist as seen by the senses. But mind is set in motion by being seen, i.e., objectified. The body, property, and the abode are the manifestations of the alaya inherent in all mankind. Citta, manas, and manavijfinana, svabhava, the 5 dharmas, the 2 forms of niratma, purity. These are elucidated by the Buddhas. Long and short and suchlike come to exist mutually conditioned. Not to be grows effective by to be and to be by not to be. When things are analyzed into atoms, there remains nothing to be discriminated as objects. Those who hold wrong views do not believe in the ever-abiding ground where the mind-only doctrine is established. The masters point out the state of consciousness attained by their inner perception, which goes indeed beyond the mental caliber of the philosophers and Sravakas. The important terms explained. Before going further, it may be desirable to explain the more important technical terms constantly used in Buddhist psychology. As is seen here, the conception of the alayavijfinana plays a chief, though silent, role in the evolution of the, that is, vijfinanas. When vijnana is used in its most comprehensive sense, it is equivalent to mind as distinguished from unthinking matter, rupa. In its specific, technical sense, it is the perceiving and discriminating activity of mind. Idealistic philosophy of the Lankavatara. It is often called simply, citta, or tathagata gava. Alaya means a storage house where all kinds of goods are kept in storage, and it is the alayavijfinana's function to store up all the memory of one's thoughts, affections, desires, and deeds. The seeds thus stored remain in the alaya perfectly quiescent and neutral. Chitta, which is used as a synonym of the alaya, may be translated mind, as distinguished from manas, that is, in its more specific sense. Chitta, according to the sutra, apparently comes from the root si, which has two senses, to gather, to pile, to require, and, to perceive, to look for. Chitta, therefore, may mean either collection or perception, and in the present case, that is, when it is identified with the alaya, Buddhist scholars take it in the sense of accumulation. So we read in the Lankavatara, Chitta gathers up karma, or karma is gathered up by chitta. Ordinarily, it may correctly be rendered thought or mind. The great source of confusion, however, comes from chitta being used frequently for the whole system of vijfinanas as well as for the alaya alone. Vijnana is one of the significant terms in Buddhism. It is difficult to find one English word for it. Jna means to know, to perceive, but vijfinana in Buddhism has a technical sense. It is not mere cognition or understanding. It is a sort of principle of conscious life as distinguished from the body, and it is also the power or faculty of discrimination. It has, however, essentially an intellectual connotation, faithfully retaining its original sense. In the case of alayavijfinana, there is no discrimination in it, no intellection. For it simply accumulates all the impressions, all the memory seeds that are produced and left behind by the activities of the other vijnana. Tathagata gava, which is another name for the alaya, is also a sort of storeroom or receptacle where the seeds of Tathagatahood are retained and matured. It has a religious shade of meaning in contradistinction to the alayavijfinana, which is a more philosophical term. Gava is generally done into Chinese as same as alaya, but literally, it means womb. It is strange that the Chinese translators never, as far as I know, rendered Tathagata gava by, but always, except when in the Shingon sect the Gavakosa dhatu is spoken of, as contrasting with the Vajradhatu. But the meaning is clear because the Tathagata gava is the womb where the Tathagatas are conceived and matured. And as we are all possible Tathagatas except that we sit generally bound like mummies by the heavy intellectual and affective coverings known as Jnayavara and Klivaraja. These two obstructions lie in our way of attaining supreme enlightenment. The intellectual one may not be so difficult to overcome as far as the intellect alone is concerned, as it is detached altogether from the influence of the passions. But these passions constituting the very root of personality from the hardest knot to be untied by all earnest followers of Buddhism. The Buddhists, however, have no desire to extinguish all the effective factors that make up the human heart. What they mean when they say that one should extirpate all the passions in order to attain perfect freedom is that our passions, as they are generally harbored, are deeply rooted in the idea of self and inseparably joined with all the egotistic impulses, and that therefore they should be disjoined and set free for the working of Mahakaruna, which, in conjunction with prajna, supreme wisdom, makes up the life of the Mahayana Buddhist. Manas, meaning, to think, to imagine. To intend, is that seat of intellection and connotation, corresponding to the Western conception of mind. It is the one term in Buddhist psychology that has no vijnana attached. At its end, it is often confused, and justifiably, with mano. Vijfana, which is one of the 6 Vijftanas recognized by all the schools of Buddhism. In the Lankavatara, Manas occupies a definite position and performs a specific function in the hierarchy of psychical activities, which will be described later. Manovijnana, like the other five vijfinanas, has a field of its own as the perceiving of the rationality of things interna, as well as externa. The Kakshura Vijnana is meant for the visibility of things, the Srotra Vijnana for their audibility, and so on. The Manavijfinana functions sometimes independently of the five Vijnanas and sometimes simultaneously and conjointly with them. To a certain extent, it may be considered equivalent to the intellect, while manas is connotative and affective besides being intellectual. Therefore, it is sometimes called klishthamanas, meaning manas in defilement. The spiritual defilement starts nowhere else but in the manas, the root of intellection and connotation. Vasana is quite a new conception in the development of Mahayana Buddhism, and the knowledge of it is indispensable to the understanding of the alayavijfinana. Vasana comes from the root vas, meaning to dwell, to stay, or to perfume. And in the Mahayana Sutras it is used in the two senses combined, that is, in the sense of a perfuming energy that leaves its essence permanently behind in the things it has perfumed. The Chinese translators generally have hsi qi, or sun hsi, for this term. Hsi meaning habit, long usage, or repeated experience. Vasana, therefore, is a kind of super-sensuous energy mysteriously emanating from every thought, every feeling, or every deed one has done or does, which lives latently in the storehouse called alayavijfinana. It is often qualified as Daushthulya, whose Chinese equivalent is Li Wu, or Kuo Wu, meaning erroneous, or evil. Vasana is morally evil and logically erroneous inasmuch as it creates an external world and causes us to cling to it as real and final. In modern psychology, we can say that vasana corresponds to memory in its widest sense. This perfuming or leaving impressions is sometimes known as sowing seeds. It is a technical term with the Yogacara philosophers, though the Lankavatara does not make many references to it. The theory of mind only. When the sutra says that all things are nothing but mind, what is meant by it? Does citta refer to the alaya, or to the whole system of the vijfinanas, or to the interaction of the alaya and the manas, when it is said that citta is under the bondage of vishaya? Citta vishaya sambandham, as on page 130, or that bondage is mind-made, bandhanam citta sambhavam, on the same page. What is meant by this citta? What does the phrase, svachitid risya matra, or citta vikal palaksha, which occurs so frequently throughout the Lankavatara, really refer to? When mention is made of purrying the outflows of the visible world from one's own mind, what is this mind? In my view, citta or mind refers in some cases to the alaya alone, in other cases to manas, or even to the whole system of vijfinanas. When the sutra says that if there is no revulsion in the alayavijnana called by the name of Tathagata Gava, there will be no extinction of the 7 functioning vijfinanas, 3, or that when the Tathagata Gava is united with the 7 vijfinanas, from attachment arises dualism, and that when this is thoroughly perceived the error is removed, we realize that the alaya is the most important conception on which the whole mechanism of the psychic life hangs. Mind only must then mean that there is nothing but the alayavijnana. In fact, the alaya is a depository of all kinds of karma seeds.